Andy, over to you.
Sir, thank you. And thank you for joining us. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I'm Colonel Andy Brockoff, and I'd like to say welcome to Between Two Ferns. We're going to have a great session today. It's a great conference this week. And just a quick shout out to FCF for putting this on here at TechNet Pacific. Like I said, my name is Andy Brockoff. I'll quickly introduce myself, then turn it over to Major General Retired Garrett Yee, who is also co-monitoring this with us. And
It was such a heavy-duty panel. It's going to take two of us, Andy, today.
it will, sir, absolutely. And thank you for joining us. So real quick, like I said, I'm Andy Brockoff. I have the honor and privilege of being the brigade commander of the 516th Signal Brigade. Prior to this, I've served in the 82nd, the 101st, a couple of special operations assignment, Human Resources Command, Army staff, Joint Staff, and I also worked at Army Cyber. And I'm really thrilled to be here, honored to be here working in the Pacific and get to work with a great team of folks here. Really quick about the panel, what you see in front of you is a newly promoted colonel and a bunch of lieutenant colonels, and they are the workhorse of the leadership of the communicators representing the Army in the Pacific. So we're just going to hit on some of the highlights of the things that they're doing and where they are, but they're going to dig down into the details. And I'd like to also orient you to the left, far left of this table, the open auditorium or whatever you call this, the screen to the left. That is our picture where our forces are arrayed for the 516th Signal Brigade. It's basically everything in the Pacific, thank you, except for Korea. Korea does fall under the responsibility of the 311th Signal Command. But what you see there is where we are arrayed to include 11th Airborne Division up north in Alaska and the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii. All right, real quick, since I'm talking about the map, I have a couple of notes I want to share with you to kind of set the stage of the theater that we all work in and provide comms in. So this is just some facts and hard data about the Pacific. As you look to the slide, you see all it encompasses. The Pacific region spans from the Arctic Circle in the north to Australia in the south, India in the west, and over to the Americas in the east. It's an incredibly diverse, expansive area encompassing a myriad of culture, geopolitics, countries, religions, and languages. It spans more than 100 million square miles. It's 52% of the Earth's surface, and it encompasses 36 nations, half the world's population, and over 3,200 spoken languages. The cultural diversity of the Pacific is immense. Indigenous people inhabit many of the Pacific Islands, each with their own distinct cultures, traditions, and languages. Additionally, due to this colonialization, migration, and trade, the region is a melting pot of various cultural influences from Asia, Europe, and beyond. Each country and island may have its own dominant religion and a blend of multiple faiths. So I kind of share that with you to kind of set the stage here. All right, sir, over to you.
Well, again, thanks for ASEA International and the local Hawaii chapter for hosting, Indo-Pacific 2024. Like the new venue and big enough to have this incredible panel with us. I've followed Andy for quite a while, and I will say, big fan of Andy when he was in the Pentagon. He would organize the orange calls, and even after he left that job, he was still organizing the orange calls until he could find someone else to do it. I have a few questions for Andy to get us started, though, so to kind of break the ice. So, Andy, who's your favorite football team?
Football. Well, so I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. So unfortunately, it's the Atlanta Falcons right now, and they're kind of struggling.
Okay, there's one person in the audience over there. I figured, might pass off with like that team as well. He's from Atlanta. All right, who's going to win the World Series? Who are you rooting for?
Yeah, the Atlanta Braves.
Okay, we'll go to the next question. If you could buy any car, and maybe you have the car of your dreams, what would it be?
Well, since I'm in Hawaii and I'd like Magnum PI, it would be a red Ferrari.
Okay. I think you never go wrong with that. And last kind of warm-up question. Now that you're in Hawaii, what's the favorite? What do you like most about being in Hawaii?
The beautiful snorkeling.
All right. Good answer. All right. Those are the warm-ups. I'm going to ask you a little bit of background information to help us get into this panel. So, what have you learned? What was like the aha moment, or oh my gosh, I wasn't thinking about that when I got here as a brigade commander. What was that for you?
I think the biggest aha moment was, having never served in this theater before, understanding you'll hear this term, the tyranny of distance, knowing that no matter where you go, it's an airplane flight that is hours and hours and hours to get to where the rest of the theater relies and exists. And that's always been, something you hear about, but until you actually serve here in the Pacific, it's a game changer, I think, just understanding the distance and the scope of everything that we do to provide communications. That was kind of the biggest challenge or aha moment I saw when I first got here.
Yeah, and I see Wayne Brock in the audience here, a former 311th commander, so I know he spent some time. There was never such thing as a one-night, overnight TDY. It was always like a week and a half, 2 weeks when he traveled. What are, from a leadership standpoint, as a brigade commander, what are some of your leadership challenges that you see, that you face?
Some of the challenges, it's a good question. There's tons of challenge, from talent management, on the personnel side, to the training of the civilian workforce. In my brigade, I have 3 NEC battalions and 1, tactical ESBE battalion. And the Army is modernizing. The Joint Force is modernizing. So it is always a challenge to make sure that what NETCOM or HQDA G6 or Army Cyber Command are telling us to do, and what we know we have to do for the future unified network operations, all the training and upskilling of both the civilian workforce and our military to keep pace and transition over time as we modernize.
Okay, that's enough for the warm-up. We're going to transition over to the panel now, and so how do you want to handle it? Do you want to have each introduce themselves, or?
Sure. Just real quick, I'll go through their names from left to right, and then I think we'll pass it over to them,
Yep.
And you'll get your little 5 to 7 minute period of time to talk about who you are, what you do, and kind of what your pain points or challenges are that you have. So first off is to my right, your left or your right, and he's right here.
This guy.
Colonel Rick Becker. He's the newly promoted colonel, a good friend of mine. He is the G3 at the 311th Signal Command. And then next to him is Tabor Mintz. He runs the RCCP. Terry Joyner is to his side. He's the commander of the 30th Signal Battalion in Hawaii. And then Barry Ciotti is the ACOS, Assistant Chief of Staff G6 of the 11th Airborne Division in Alaska. And to his right is Adam Brinkman. He is the 25th Infantry Division G6 in Hawaii. And then the last two is Dustin Durst. He is the battalion commander of the Signal Battalion in 78th Signal Battalion in Japan. And he also owns the RHN in Guam. And then Isabella Lundy is the tactical 307th ESBE commander.
All right, Rick, you're up.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. We'll try to keep you guys awake. My name is Rick Becker, and as Andy said, I was just promoted. I really just walked into PX. They sell these Colonel's Eagles to anybody, so you can go get you a pair if you want. That's not true, by the way. So I've been in the G3 of the 311th since July, and it's a very exciting and dynamic position. I tell everybody that I've got 17 problems to deal with on a daily basis, and every day there's 17 different problems. But we're really fortunate that we have a lot of signaleers that have some depth and some breadth in the experience of providing communications to warfighters across a multitude of experiences, and we're spread across the Pacific. I've got great relationships with the USAPAC G6, Colonel Alton Johnson. I think he's been my boss on multiple occasions throughout my career, and so it's really great to be able to team with him. Andy Brokoff and I are really good friends, and it's really great to have friends and teammates that you can work together with, especially when the roles and responsibilities are split or dispersed. And then for the battalion commanders that support us, I'm sorry, let me back up. Tabor Mintz is the RCCP. Couldn't ask for a better teammate because he's probably smarter than all of us put together, but he allows us to opine every once in a while and act like we know what we're talking about. And so it's really great. So you talk about the roles and responsibilities at the senior levels of communications on island and across the Pacific. It's really great to have those relationships and to have the battalion commanders and the G6s that we do that are not afraid to take prudent risk, to get the warfighter what they need, and are able to articulate requirements back to the warfighters in the language that they speak, right? And to be able to say, I heard what you said, and we're going to get you what you need. Sometimes that's difficult, but we're figuring it out. And we had a great session yesterday with a couple of the former commanders of the 311th, and it's really interesting to see that some of the challenges that we're struggling with in the Pacific Theater haven't changed. They're kind of similar across time and space, and then there's others that we've been able to solve through a multitude of increased technology and processes and relationships. So I would say my biggest challenge right now is probably trying to figure out how to do interoperability without keeping it at the Army level. And so interoperability is challenging in and of itself at the joint level, right? And keeping it on the U.S. side, but knowing that we've got to interoperate with as many coalition and partners and allies that we have across the Pacific, and making sure that whatever we're doing in the Army can be uplifted very, very quickly into a joint and coalition environment. That's probably the hardest part, because when we figure it out for the Army, that's a quick win. When we can get it at the joint level, that's a longer term win. But then you bring in all of these different countries, and we don't have a NATO in the Pacific that has standards across 41 different countries. We've got 37 or 38 different countries that have their own standards that we've got to uplift. So I would say that's our biggest challenge. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Tabor.
Okay, good afternoon. Tabor Mintz here. I've lived in Hawaii since I was 4. I took a stint after graduating from Radford High School, go Rams, to California, and then by grace of I'm not sure who, came back here to Hawaii, and somehow have been with the Regional Cyber Center for going on my 7th year. It's really odd from an Army perspective to be around for so long in a single unit, but it's allowed me to continue to drive things forward that started off about 7 years ago and are continuing to pay fruitions here. So here at the Regional Cyber Center Pacific, I manage and maintain the cyberspace domain for the Army networks out here, and are doing DODIN, operate and maintain, as well as Overwatch from a defensive cyber operations perspective here within the theater. Do we have challenges with that? Sure. As we move to an Army unified network, it gets a little easier, slowly but surely. And as the leaders like on this panel start to see the benefits of having intersecting sectors of fire from a cyberspace perspective, we start seeing that we don't got to go at it alone, right? We can do it together, and we can see each other on both ends. So here at the RCC, when we're working, as you can see, I'm the oddball, right? Not only am I the oddball with what I'm wearing, but I'm also the oddball that I don't answer from an operations perspective to anyone here in theater. But I know that I am a team member here. I'm globally aligned, but theater focused, right? And so it's a unique perspective that I get to have here and share with my counterparts here, not to say no, but sometimes to say from a cyberspace domain, while they're worried about a lot of the land component pieces, geographically where things are, I really don't care, because it all, when it connects back to the DODIN, looks like cyberspace. So I have that unique perspective to then work with them to go, maybe this doesn't work for the Army, let's adjust it this way or that way. So when talking about our challenges with the Regional Cyber Center, with our industry partners, a lot of it is interoperability. So Colonel Becker talked about the interoperability with joint I'm thinking from the interoperability with a lot of the cyber space equipment and technologies that we're using. A lot of the vendors, right, they say they can do it the best, but we need another vendor, we need other tools to overwatch. The reason we need that is because our weakest asset really is humans, to be honest. And as we take things from GOTS and use COTS equipment, humans can mess that up. So when we're doing things like the global SIPR network, things like that, we need two tools, right, to do some overwatch on a lot of what we're doing to see if humans have messed up. And so that ties with interoperability, a lot of API that needs to integrate and needs to be accessible, as well as data schemas. When you come up with your own data schema and it doesn't come in a way that we can modify, it becomes very hard to do Overwatch, to integrate with other tools. We understand that there might be a sales reason for that, but from us as integrators, us as operators, it makes it very hard for us to do that, and we have to spend our time making other tools to bridge that gap. Thank you.
All right, Terry.
All right. Well, it's always hard to follow Tabor. He's just such a smart guy. But hey, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Joyner. I'm the 30th Signal Battalion Commander. We're considered the voice of Hawaii. We're considered the voice of Hawaii because we provide enterprise services to all of the folks here on Oahu, as well as the Big Island, and then also out at Kwajalein Atoll. And that averages out to about 45,000 customers amongst those three islands. Most of the theater command elements are a part of my customer base, which includes the 311th, 8th TSC, 9th MSC, all of those huge units here across the island. When I think of what we do here, as far as setting the digital theater, one thing is that we're doing is providing freedom of maneuver for the forces across the warfighter. The way that we're doing that is through the migration of AUDS. We did that a few months ago. At this point now, and I'll kind of hit that a little bit later, AUDS is the Army Unified Directorate Services, where we're able to get all of our customers to be under one Active Directory, and they are able to plug and play anywhere on the Doden, which is a game changer for us. Back in the day, I don't know if any of y'all remember like Road Warrior packages where you had to actually go to a unit, send over your STIGs and things of that nature. But now under the Army Unified Network, you'll be able to plug and play your network, your computer anywhere on the network. The other thing that we're doing is enabling C2, centralized C2. And we're doing that through the Army Edge Cloud Computing, where we are allowing our customers to be able to put their tactical information in the cloud. And what that'll be able to provide to them is the ability to have a centralized location for their be able to have a common operating picture to be able to see and make decisions on the battlefield. The other way that we are supporting the warfighter is through the data-centric warfare. We're ensuring that they have in cloud computing and the ability to make the faster decisions on the battlefield. So when I think of some of the challenges that we have here in the 30th Signal Battalion, with all of these new technologies, we have a lot of challenges. One of the things is making sure that our workforce is upskilled and ready to deal with all the new technologies that are out there. And then the second thing is integrating all of those technologies into the enterprise. That's all I have. Thank you.
Hey, just maybe before we go any further, Andy, I was, listening to the first three, officers and, all three signaleers, yet, completely different challenges and problem sets. I mean, interoperability, that's, right in your face when you're in this theater. Whereas if you're CONUS, you're not even thinking about that. And so if you're a strategic battalion commander somewhere in, Texas or Louisiana, you're not thinking interoperability. But here, that's table stakes, right? That you think about. And then with Tabor, it's cybersecurity and humans. Oh my gosh, the humans are the problem, I guess, huh, Tabor? Is that what you're saying?
Can be.
And then Tabor, enterprise services to a place where, you don't have landlines necessarily. You have undersea cables, but you don't have landlines, terrestrial in the traditional sense. And so, as I was listening just to them, the first three, I was struck with just the variety of challenges that they have. And, what's your take on that? I mean, as a brigade commander.
By and large, even to what General Morrison often talks about is the integration of all these pieces and how we, as we move forward in modernization. But working here in the Pacific, with the amount of partners that we have, all the different disparate networks, like Rick mentioned, there's no NATO here. It is, talking to the point of interoperability and sharing information with all the people that when we do go to war, we're going to have to interact and communicate effectively with these other countries and with the other services, kind of to Rick's point. But it's a challenge. It's unlike any other place, I think, where the U.S. Army or the Joint Force will fight. I know everywhere we go to war, we will fight with a joint partner and other coalition partners. But here, it is so vast and uniquely different than the rest of where the COCOMs operate.
Yeah. No, that's coming out pretty good. Okay, we're going to continue on with Barry in some part of the world where it gets cold in the wintertime. So no whining about the cold, Barry.
Yes.
Over to you.
I'm Lieutenant Colonel Barry Ciotti, and when I left my house on Wednesday, it was 15 degrees. So being here in Hawaii is great, and appreciate your hospitality while we're here. Myself and Sergeant Major Green, who's over there in the back, coming here as a team to the conference. So we talk about the 11th Airborne Division, the newest division in our Army, and the only airborne division in this theater. But we throw a little level of complexity on that. We also have an Arctic mission. So not only do we have to support the Pacific as a P1 unit, we also have an Arctic mission to support our Arctic partners over the pole. So the Finlands, the Swedens over there, to support them against Russia and those adversaries. So we put that other level of complexity upon us at the 11th Airborne Division. And you look at the globe, and the globe is round, and people say Alaska's so far away from everything. We're actually closer than most places. We're actually, the first island chain, we're actually closer in Alaska than we are here in Hawaii, just because the way the globe is shaped and the way we can fly over the pole and around the Earth. Yamasakura last year, we supported that mission in Japan. It was a 6-hour direct flight from Alaska to Japan. We went to Sweden in the spring, and it was a 7-hour flight to Sweden from Alaska. So we are about 8 hours from 85% of the first of modernized countries on the Earth. So first world countries. So we're actually pretty close to everything, even though we seem really far away. Nothing's close, it's all far, and that's another level of complexity. Plus, we are also a split division. So we also are, there's about a 380-mile split between our first brigade and our second brigade. Our second brigade being down at Fort Richardson, and then our first brigade being up at Fort Wainwright. So when we were at JPMRC last year, Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center up in Fairbanks in Donley training area, we brought our second brigade up there to be our Op 4 to fight against our first brigade. And that level of complexity with the weather, it was negative 50 degrees when we started getting into the box. And that's one of our problems, is a lot of the military equipment does not work when it's at negative 50 degrees. So we have to find solutions for our division that we have to make things work. Everyone's gone to Iraq and Afghanistan, and you had your STT set up with the cooling stations. We're doing the opposite now, and we're having heating stations. So we have to keep those warm or they will freeze. I think the first brigade had their vehicles on for 30 days straight, never shut them off. So you have your Humvees and your other vehicles running the entire time just to support that mission. And one thing General Eifler, our old commander, used to say is, an Arctic soldier can go anywhere, but not everyone can come to the Arctic and train, because there's certain equipment that you need and there's certain training that you need to be able to survive that Arctic mission. For example, our paratroopers from 211 jumped into JPMRC over with 2501? JPMRC 2501 with 25th. Jumped into Hawaii, jumped in, supported 25th ID. A week later, turned around, jumped back into Alaska. And now they're at their FTX. So we're a whole other level of complexity. So we're going to participate last year we participated in 18 exercises as a division. This year I think it's 19. And that's not only in the Pacific, that's also in Europe and one in Chile. So high altitude and mountainous terrain, we also train in that. So that's another piece of our mission. So 211 went down to Chile and trained with the Chilean Army down in Southcom. Yeah, just a lot of challenges. Enjoy being here in Hawaii and get some of the warm weather. We actually have some weather delays up in Alaska, so appreciate your time today and look forward to the panel.
Hey, thanks, Barry. Maybe you'll have a weather delay getting back to Alaska. You never know. All right. Adam, over to you.
Hey, team. Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Adam Brinkman. I'm the 25th ID G6. So first off, what we're working on in 25th ID, we are a C2 fixed unit. We're one of the two C2 fixed. Well, I guess 10th Mountain Division is now a C2 fixed unit. So one of the three C2 fixed units within the United States Army. And what does C2 fixed mean? C2 fixed means that we take the existing C2 equipment that's currently in the inventory and modernize that equipment to the greatest extent possible and incorporate mission partners like 11th Airborne Division, who jumped in a couple of weeks ago, and make sure that we were able to communicate and interoperate with everybody that we possibly can. When I say everybody, what do I mean by that? I mean, we integrated with 7 other partner nations on attack-based SBUE type architecture, along with special forces, along with our conventional brothers here. And we were able to do that, and we were able to make everybody talk or communicate because we focused on data centrism. We weren't worried about interoperable waveforms. We weren't worried about what FBUE CB2, what TAC version you're on. We were worried about getting the data back in to be correct. So that's part of the C2 fix. We'll talk a little bit about that. We're also a transformation and contact unit. So what does transformation and contract unit means? Well, it's basically the Army's way to undo the things that were done by modularity. So all of the brigade combat team, all of the unique and inherent capabilities that used to be in the brigade from the global war on terrorism era, those capabilities are coming back out and they're being re-centralized at the division as the division becomes the primary unit of action. And so that means you have things coming back, such as the division signal battalion, which we're going to be standing that up in the second quarter, so we can talk about that a little bit more as well. But that also means that we have lots of folks in the division who are really, really centered on still focusing on a brigade-centric fight. And something unique that was brought up for our last JPMRC effort under C2 Fix was we actually employed the entire division architecture, which is 101st, just had the brigades solely with the HICON from the JRTC rotation. So it wasn't the inherent brigade, or excuse me, the division headquarters. We had the entire division architecture out there fighting with the Pleo constellations, with upgraded TAC systems, using the tactical data platform, right? So we actually got to experience the LISCO fight in the most truest sense that I think we've probably seen in quite a while. And I'll tell you, that was very, very challenging for us as we have folks who still want to give everything to that brigade, which is a good place to start from, but we need to elevate our thinking a little bit and understand how, if it wasn't just one singular brigade, if we had both maneuver brigades in the fight, how would we actually conduct that battle? Because it's just like Colonel Ciatti said, like it was our 3rd Brigade fighting against our 2nd Brigade. 3rd Brigade was the OP4, 2nd Brigade was the training unit. But yeah, so those are the three big things that we're working on. I mean, the biggest challenge I have right now is honestly like trying to know where to put my time. Had a time dilemma just today, right? So do I sit here or do we go support Gerald Morrison who goes down to 25th ID? Gerald Morrison's team was like, no, you sit here. So that made the decision pretty easy. But hey, thanks so much to all the other panel members. Like, I got a great set of teammates. And I mean, anybody up here you can call on the phone anytime. You get answers solved. So thanks.
Yeah, I just point out that, like, Barry and Adam are both G6s, for the respective divisions. And, a different problem set, than the rest. And that is, pleasing your 2-star commander, every day. So it's a different kind of pressure in addition to solving the the signal challenges that they have, but also trying to ensure that their commanding general is happy. So an extra kudos for you two. Over to Dustin.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Dustin Durst, and I'm the commander of the 78th Signal Battalion based out of Japan. So Terry Joyner and I have a very similar mission set. My organization is responsible for providing last-mile connectivity and enterprise services to both Army and DoD users throughout Japan. But what is different is we have a substantial SATCOM mission set that is within our organization, and that really is supporting warfighters throughout the Pacific, and I'll highlight a little bit of that as I go through my comments. Probably a little bit different from my counterparts this afternoon. I would like to highlight just a little bit of Japan perspective with my USRJ counterparts that are in the back there. Really want to highlight one particular new development where the Japan area of responsibility is undergoing what I would call an operational transformation. Some of you may be aware, but the Secretary of Defense traveled out to Japan in July, and during that visit, he made an announcement to upgrade U.S. Forces Japan to an operational headquarters. And what I think that will mean longer term is really an increased focus on operational warfighting capability and capacity, which really hasn't been the case in Japan in the past. But the DoD statement that announced this was really noteworthy to me for a couple of points. So it really focused on increasing bilateral presence in Japan's Southwest Islands. So that's a big thing. Improving cybersecurity cooperation, cross-domain operations, and bilateral exercises and training. So if you look at that statement as guidance, I think it provides a pretty good roadmap for where we're going, where we need to be prepared to fight, and what the network might need to look like to support the warfighter in those locations. And then I would just take a look at how does the Strategic Signal Battalion fit into that operational picture? How can we help to operationalize the digital theater? And I really think the first step that we kind of all face is we have to continue to modernize our transport infrastructure to support this transition to an operational force. We've got to look at things like resiliency, redundancy, capacity to transport large amounts of data. For 78th Signal Battalion in particular, our largest customer is the Joint Force. So in Okinawa in particular, we've already started this modernization of our transport network where we support 35,000 DoD and joint customers with interbase transport. And that's also got to be linked in with future Army and NETCOM efforts to provide this globally integrated transport network capability. And I think the second step is really to continue leveraging our bilateral engagement operations and opportunities to test communications and interoperability with our Japanese partners. And that's really through exercises like Yamasakura and Orient Shield, where we have those opportunities. And that really takes me into my second point, which is, how do we extend the network? Really have to leverage partnerships, leverage transport agnostic solutions to extend the network. Colonel Brokoff talked about tyranny of distance and really where we are in the Pacific. It's a big place, right? So we're not going to have the opportunity to provide strategic connectivity to everywhere the warfighter is set to deploy. So from my perspective, I look at, along with USRJ, how do we provide services in those first and second island chains? I think the easy button for all of us is really SATCOM, right? That's become an expectation for the Joint Force, but we all seem to understand that in a large-scale conflict, that will likely become saturated. So my battalion supports the Army, but we also support a number of DoD entities and the Joint Force through our SATCOM services at the DoD Large Enterprise Gateway on Okinawa, through the regional hub node out on Guam. So we're working very closely with DISA, with the Wideband Enterprise SATCOM Systems managers, to a lesser extent with the Space Force, to add new terminals, add capacity, add modems, look at ways that we can improve the capabilities at those various sites. One of the things that we're also looking at with 311th Signal Command is the potential to add a low Earth orbit gateway and integrate that into the regional hub node at Guam, really to help reduce latency, to see can we get connectivity closer to the warfighter. But at the end of the day, I don't think that SATCOM initiative will really solve the capacity problem that we have on its own. So that's where we really have to look at what are we doing to integrate with both our coalition partners and our commercial partners that have points of presence that we can potentially leverage to get into the fight quicker. So we do have some use cases for this in places like the Southwest Islands, where we've utilized Japan Self-Defense Force connections and also commercial transport. And I think it really opens up conversations about what capabilities our joint and combined partners have as an alternative means to extend the network. So in short, I would just say we have to continue looking at partner connections, transport agnostic solutions, and really commercial service providers that can enable us to fight off existing infrastructure as we get to the fight. With that, I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Lundy. Thank you.
You go ahead, Isabella.
Thank you, sir. Aloha, everybody. Aloha.
Aloha.
All right. I'm the last one, so I realize maybe the attention span is dipping. Hopefully I
No,
can...
we're good. We're good. We're good.
All right. Lieutenant Colonel Isabella Lundy. I have served in various positions from platoon leader of a node center under multi-subscriber equipment to company commander of WIN-T equipment of a tactical organization, and now as a battalion commander of Expeditionary Signal Battalion Enhanced, and a product of small network nodes. So I have seen the Army transition to its third major equipping solution. And so it's been quite a ride, and there's been very many lessons learned. And here in the 307th, we do have a very unique mission set. We're currently not the only ESBE in the Pacific. We also have our sister organization in the 304th in Korea on the Penn, and we have the 51st ESBE at JBLM, that's Pacific facing, but we are the primary support organization for all elements in the Indo-Pacific theater. And who do we serve? We serve primarily designed to serve the have-nots, those that don't have their own internal organic equipment, but we tend to serve all those who need it. And happily do so. So everyone from 94th Army Air Defense Missile Command to medical, to the 8th Theater Support Command, to the MDTFs currently as they're establishing their own internal signal support capacity, and the list honestly goes on and on. We operate primarily steadily in 14 countries across the Pacific to include different territories through Operation Pathways, and we've got teams on enduring missions, on support missions, and we are everywhere all the time, and we're busy. But we like it that way. And what I would like to say is, just like really any organization in the military, really, people are our largest resource. And again, just like any organization in the military today, that's where really we're lacking when it comes to personnel and manning. And so what does that mean to me? To me, it just means that we have to really look towards the future, because this is going to be our problem set for quite some time. And we're looking at, ensuring that our equipment is really lightweight. It's definitely something that we go through and have to think about in our missions. A lot of our equipment definitely has to be shipped if it's at least not over, can't be over 100 pounds in weight. So we look at how equipment is cased. We look at the weight of all of our equipment when it comes to our transport and our baseband. It really is important. We have equipment that we can't take on missions, not because we don't want to, but because we're restricted to due to weight travel. And I don't know if any other theater can say that. I joked in a conversation I had, but I had to step on a scale to get on a plane to get to one of our locations where I was going out to visit our soldiers. And they could only take one piece. They could select one form of transport to take with them. So it's not that absolutely our equipment is scalable, but it's not that we don't want to use it, but if we can't use all of our transport, all of our pace, then what good are we really when it comes to C2 and providing our commanders that ability to be able to provide them that complete C2 package in this very diverse environment when it comes to the terrain, the temperature, the environment, I mean, you name it. It's very complex. So that's the environment we operate in, and I will end with saying that we are the only tactical battalion in the 516th, and it's quite a beautiful thing because in the strategic brigade with 3 strategic sister battalions, we have really that connection where the future's headed. We're kind of exemplifying that, that one network, that one team, that strategic network that the tactical organizations are now tapping into. So thank you for having us and listening to us here today. And sir, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, you might end last, but I tell you what, very interesting. And as I was listening to each of the panel members go down and talk about their perspective, no two are alike. Even both the G6s have their own unique challenges. The 2, strategic battalions have their own unique challenges. And every one of you, from where you sit, are doing some great things. So I'm going to ask Andy to give us some thoughts about, what we've heard. So over to you.
Yes, sir. Just in general, there's these themes that represent everything that these leaders do across the Pacific to provide comms, not just to support the Army, but the Joint Force. And it's interoperability. They talk about modernization. They talk about integration and leveraging everything that they have where they are to better do their job. And then the overarching enterprise that supports them and the warfighters across the Pacific. And I kind of, even down to even talking about equipment. You got equipment issues in Alaska, you got equipment issues in the ESB. It's fascinating just to kind of see, and that's really why we wanted to do the panel, so that the audience could really see how unique each and everybody's organization is that falls under the 516th and ultimately 311th. So it's fascinating to me. I did want to kind of highlight something. Dustin talked about it. The other necks talked about it. Even the G6 has kind of alluded to it. But I just want to share with you a couple of things that we're doing in the current network to build resiliency and redundancy and diversity. And there's this term called living off the land, and it's something that we're Dark Horizon talks about it. Other folks bring it up, but it's this capability that Dustin kind of brought up about what we want to do everything we can to leverage the capability of where we are to better support the warfighter. I just think that's really neat. The other things that we talk about is the diversity in the constellations that we're using. We're looking at LEO, GEO, and MEO. We're looking at fiber diversity. We all tie into fiber, whether it's DISA, Netcom, some commercial, teleco, and we use Gate a lot. So really what I'm trying to get at is just building resiliency, redundancy, and diversity in the network that we use right now to support everybody up here, and that's kind of their job. And then the kind of last thing I want to, we haven't talked about that much really, but I see the future is that how we're going to transition into software-defined equipment so that we can get to being transport agnostic. And when we talk about the RHN, it's kind of a single spot in the Pacific that, because it's a strategic location, it's what the threat says about it, and they're in one spot. So I think the future we're looking at various locations for that similar capability that's software defined. It doesn't have to stay in one island at one time. It can pick up and move, and just like Dave mentioned, leverage the capability where you need it and where it is, and that's not just one spot. So it's just kind of a overarching thing that I kind of see and hear each and every one of them talk about, sir.
No, I think it was incredibly interesting just to hear, especially when Isabella had to get on the scale. I thought that was, okay, we're really down to the details there on that. And I would say if you're, in uniform out there and you're thinking about your next assignment in the theater, each one is giving you an interesting perspective of what, some of the challenges are that you may be up to, really. And as I was looking at it, I also saw some friends. I saw Mark Parker, saw Kim over there. Can't hide from Washington State. I think Susan Myers looking at her phone. So, and it's good to see, all the friends out here supporting this today. You're going to ask some targeted questions, I think. But before we do, at the end, we're going to vote on the uniform you like the best, because there's quite a variety here today. I was trying to understand which is, so many combinations to this new uniform.
If
Anyway.
only we had the new PT uniform. We don't know what it looks like yet.
Coming to a store near you.
All right, so you have some targeted questions, I think, Andy. So go ahead.
Okay, I do. I think we'll have a quick, not quick, we'll go for a couple of minutes and then we'll open it up to the audience.
There we go.
So to Barry, you're at the top of my list. The most unusual and a kind of enlightening situation that you have. Brand new division, it's an airborne division, and actually, in distance-wise, it's closer to a lot of the places from that Hawaii would be located. It's all, and I've heard of these things before, but I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm curious, since it is such a new organization, can you kind of talk to the audience a little bit about some of the big accomplishments? I know you've been over there as the G6 for over a year now, but, and it's always a pain. It's really difficult to stand up something from scratch and get it up and running. But I know you've got JPMRC, you're in Operation Pathways. Like, your division is really doing an amazing job. Can you kind of talk to some of the integration that you've done with the Joint Force, preparing for these things, and kind of where the division's at now as far as all the accomplishments over the last year?
Oh, yes, sir. So, like Isabella talked about, she supports the have-nots. When you're standing up a division, you start out as a have-not. So, right before I got here, we were getting support from Isabella and her team, and we continue to get some support, but we have grown up and we've started getting our own equipment, and we have been putting networks together on our own. Some great accomplishments from YS 85 last year. So we did CPX2 last month, CPX3 this month, and then we're going to go to YS 87 soon in December. But we've relied on not only our Army partners, but industry partners to help us with getting some equipment in, some money from Congress that was given to us for some transport that we bought. We invested in some LEO transport. That's also a difficulty up in Alaska. So when you get up to the 65 degrees longitude, thank you, 65 degrees longitude, the rotation of the Earth, you can no longer see geosynchronous antennas. So you run into the Earth and you can't see those satellites. So getting some PLEO up in Alaska has really helped, and we've done great things with that. Some of the accomplishments we did at JPMRC, we were able to build a division TAC from scratch. One of the biggest problems we have is we don't have any vehicle platforms. So we took old Humvees and we built a division TAC from the Humvees. We mounted a Star Shield on it, and we put some comms equipment in the back, some ITN equipment that we got from the Army, very light ITN fielding that we received, and we built that DTAC where my guys were able to stream SIPR, Cisco meeting server, from Anchorage, Alaska to Fairbanks. That's like 400 miles of Cisco meeting services being streamed on the road in Alaska. We were able to, our division commander at the time said his expectation was, hey, 30 minutes, you gotta have that thing up and back down, the division TAC. Our guys were able to do it in about 16 minutes, and the limb fact for that whole thing was our radio antennas. We didn't have the right radio antennas, so it took us longer to break the radio antennas down than it did the upper TI stuff. We probably could have got that to under 10 minutes and remained on the go because the Assistant 3, the G3, would take meetings from the back of the Humvee while they were jumping. So our upper TI was up the entire time. It was the lower TI piece that we had to work on, get the right equipment in. We're still doing that, still building capability, and doing all those great things. And just moving on, we're looking for great things in the future. We got some UFERs approved this year to get some more equipment in, and we're even looking at some en-route mission for our airborne unit. So they have en-route mission command in the air is the next thing we're going to do, instead of relying on for support from other units. If you look at all the other airborne units in the Army, they have that EMC support with them in their theater. Even 173rd has 509 signal that supports them with that. But we've come a long way. We've come a long way building a multi-million-dollar network. Right now, I think we're supporting 3 different classified networks with home station and tactical forward nodes when we need them. So we are on SIPR, we're on CXJ, but we're also on European MPE now because we have those mission partners up in the Arctic Circle up in Europe. We went up there and we actually C2'd 173rd's jump into Sweden last year, and it's a great accomplishment. We can go anywhere in the world very quickly as long as we have the proper support at this time, and we get all the equipment that we want to get. I think we could be a self-sufficient division to be able to anytime, anywhere, whether it be in the Pacific or in Northern Europe, that we can respond to. So we're doing a lot of great things, had a great team. That's the big thing is the people. We didn't see a lot of our lower enlisted and junior like NCOs come in until this year. So we've been doing a lot of this stuff out of Hyde with captains and majors and some senior NCOs, E8s, E9s, and stuff like that. So doing a lot with less. Even our force structure, sir. So a typical division, 82nd Airborne Division, you were the G6 there. How many people were in your division?
Across the division?
Division headquarters.
Oh,
540, sir.
540, Barry.
Yeah. So in the 11th Airborne Division, about 430 personnel. So we're doing all this stuff that the Army wants us to do, just like we're in the global force management, just like everybody else is. We're doing all this stuff the Army wants us to do with less. So it's a great team. We're really getting after it. Love the training up there, and we have those environmental issues too. So doing a lot, sir.
All right. Well, I mean, thanks for that perspective. Now, you all, get your questions ready. So we're getting ready to have some Q&A in a few minutes, but I think you have one or two more questions before we go to Q&A.
Yeah, I just one other dynamic, because all the folks up here on the panel are active duty military except one. Colonel Rick Becker, the G311, is multi-compo. So I wanted to kind of throw that twist to this so you can kind of elaborate that. But being that it's a multi-compo organization spread across this extremely dispersed AOR, what are the challenges of integration that y'all see with Compo 2 and 3 added to the fight?
Yeah, I think our biggest challenge is maintaining readiness, right? And it sounds like maybe some people wouldn't think that would be our first challenge, but it really is, because having multi-compo, and this is my first time being in a multi-compo unit, so I've been active duty my entire career, and I quickly had to get spun up on understanding what it takes to get somebody onto ADOS orders and to the location that we need them to be at. But when they arrive, we can't waste 2 or 3 days spinning them up and getting them trained either on the equipment or on the exercise or on the situation. So it's really forcing us to look at how do we integrate better day to day, and then understanding that if I want to augment my active duty forces with some AGR or ADOS folks, and I think I've got 6 months to get them ready. Well, they're only training 1 weekend a month, right? So that's 12 days. They've got 12 days to get ready. And so once I really understood that, then it changes the calculus. We've got to figure out how to get more creative, and how do we ensure that they stay trained and ready at a readiness level that we can then plug them in where we need them to be. And so trying to be creative, working with the battalions to figure out if we can fill some of their personnel gaps, right? I think the first person I talked to when I came in and understood the challenge was Isabella Lundy, because I was like, hey, you've got manning challenges and I've got people that might be able to help. How do we do the training so that I can provide you, personnel that you can plug into your formations? And her answer actually surprised me. She said, sir, I'd rather you send me somebody that's not trained, because I would like to train them on the spot with my team, right? The other piece that I found that was interesting that I wasn't thinking about, Isabella talked a lot about the challenges of getting equipment in and out of the exercise locations. And she really highlighted for me that, don't give me somebody that just shows up after we've already set up. Getting the equipment over, setting it up, having them stay there to tear it down, that's the hardest part when we're short-staffed. And so it was a good education. I appreciate that. But I think that the maintaining readiness is the hardest piece, especially with such a short training window. And so we're looking at how do we integrate on the day-to-day. And I think our team has done a really good job of bringing our support unit. We've got a support unit in Tustin, California, and bringing them in and saying, okay, we're going to align you to a paragraph and a line number, and we're going to have you do kind of a constant right seat, left seat. And what's really great is when I have an active duty member going on leave for more than 1 or 2 days, they can hand off to the ADOS or the AGR folks, and they'll take over during that leave if they're available. And so we're able to integrate and iterate. And then when we need them to come over for either exercise support or augmentation for day-to-day operations, they're able to walk in, they understand the theater a little bit better, they understand the mission a little bit better. That's the biggest piece. And then in a resource-constrained environment, we would really love to take advantage of live, virtual, and constructive training. But how do we enable that without all the resources that we would like to have and across multi-compo, right? It's easy to do if it's active to active, but trying to do that, multi-compo is definitely challenging. But I think we've got the right people, and we're definitely looking at it, getting creative as we try to solve those challenges.
No, thanks, Rick. You just highlighted the fact that it's not only joint and coalition, but multi-compo.
Yep.
That adds to the complexity of the mission set here in theater. Now we're going to, ask a short question of the remaining, officers that didn't get a chance to answer a specific question. It'll be a choice, okay? You can either answer, what could industry do to help? Because I'm an industry guy now. Or you can say, what could we as government do better? So you got a choice. Pick one and then answer it. So start with Tabor.
I mean, I don't want to cop out that I did what can industry do better. I kind of mentioned it before, right? Interoperability. I mentioned that humans are the problem, right? Are part of the problem when things go wrong. No, I mean, right, it is, okay? A vendor might state, well, that can't happen. Well, I'm sorry, humans can make that happen. So when the interoperability piece is, we need those overlapping sectors of fire. And sometimes it's not the acquisition of another company that gives that overlap, because then it's part of that same organization. Sometimes we need 2 different vendors to look over something. One doing the configuration and saying, yes, the configuration's there, and another backing it up to go, yes, I actually see that happening, even though that second vendor could also do the configuration. And it's very important to do that as an overlap for potential human error, especially as we're moving away from hardware-based, can't mess things up like with Type 1 encryptors, to things like GSN, CSFC, various other technologies and platforms out there. So please be open. I know they're competitors, but from our perspective, just like we do with Overwatch for 2 ISR platforms on a very key piece of terrain, we have 2 different elements looking. We need that in the cyberspace as well. Thank you.
No, thanks. I mean, interoperability cuts a lot of different ways. I mean, there's also the interoperability with our coalition members, right? So there's that aspect of just being able to communicate, but also integration with tools and such. And Tabor, I have this picture in my head that, you're the RCC director, you have this 5-gallon bucket full of erasers, and as, humans are messing up, erasers are going across the room and hitting people in the back of the head. But I get what you're saying. And we do have someone from the Joint Interoperability Test Command here in the audience, so, we can also have that conversation. Rich, right there on the edge from JITIC. Okay, over to you, Terry.
Roger. Okay, I'll take this from the industry's perspective. I'll just say automation, automation, automation. The thing that I'm looking at here is being able to provide tools that identify the new vulnerabilities and all these new technologies that we are fielding and that we're trying to integrate into our network and our enterprise. The other one is automation that helps us see our network better, and that's able to help us improve our network. And then the last part of that is automation that helps with our risk management framework process. We have to work quite a bit in this tool called EMAS, where we have to update a lot of the different STIGs, and we have to update POAMs and things of that nature. And to be able to automate some of those processes would be a huge game changer for us down at the battalion level. That's all I had, sir.
Hey, thanks. All right, Adam.
Hey, sir, team. I think there's an overwhelming amount of options right now. When you talk to industry, a lot of folks are doing the same thing. I think there's also an overwhelming amount of PMs on the Army side, and every PM has got their own equity, right? So I think on both sides, how do we get all the players that have equities in the room to help solve a mission instead of siloing everything, right? Until we kind of get out of our own way on that and kind of form a coalition of the willing, we're going to keep having some problems where we just bifurcate ourselves unnecessarily. Thanks, sir.
Hey, thanks.
Sir, I will also hit on the vendor requests here and really dovetail off of what both Tabor and Terry said very, very specifically. Several of the organizations that are represented up here today went through a cybersecurity operational readiness assessment over the past year. And one of the things that I believe we learned through that process was that really that we need to move faster and with fewer mistakes. Tabor hit on it. It's the human element is really one of our big weaknesses. So talking about what Terry said, automated solutions, and I think there are two specific areas from my perspective that we can look at, and that is automated STIG compliance and situational awareness tools. It's been mentioned over and over again, but we're seeing that there are tools available for vendors, but many of them are either hardware or vendor specific. And in the Pacific, we really do have a blended network. We don't have everything of one type from one vendor or manufacturer. And so really looking at cost-effective alternatives that can offer some level of comprehensive cybersecurity and automated compliance capability would be extremely helpful. And just kind of dovetailing on also what Terry said there, looking at tools that would enable us to better view ourselves, right? So the 516th Theater Signal Brigade has been leading this effort to explore dashboard tools to enable enhanced situational awareness and decision-making capabilities for commanders and really for cybersecurity focused organizations. So we need the ability to visualize massive amounts of data across various data planes and sources in an automated way. Again, there are tools that are out there to do that, but to take all the different data sets that we have and visualize them in one location, that's really where we're trying to get to. Thank you.
All right. Oh,
I just wanted to comment, yes, neck dashboard, let's get it done.
all right. All right, Isabella.
So from the 307th perspective, it is a little bit of both. Again, not a cop-out, but just really the organization has 48 small network nodes, 48 teams, 16 across 3 line companies. And so that's a lot of equipment with very few people. And so keeping it lightweight and keeping it ruggedized so that it doesn't break, maintaining our readiness and reducing our downtime is important. Ruggedizing cables, ruggedizing a lot of this equipment is important. Lots of transport, lots of transit, lots of braking. And we're kind of over it, you know? Like, we really could use some help there. And so truthfully, that's where we're at. And so, like I said, I've already kind of stressed about the weight constraints, not just from a personnel perspective, but from a theater perspective and where we are. And, you know, really those are my 2 main points.
Yeah, I think we kind of overachieved on the equipment set for the signal battalion. You got everything. Now you have to keep track of it all and maintain it all. All right, so are we ready to go to questions from the audience?
Unless, I'll give them one opportunity.
Oh, okay, go ahead, yeah.
For the panel, if there's something, your burning desire that you didn't get to say, that you'd like to say, I'll give you a couple of seconds. And if not, we'll transition to questions from the audience. Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just would like to take the opportunity to say that it's 2024. We've got the smartest people in our militaries, in uniform, as civilians supporting contractor workforce as well. Also in industry, we've got some really smart people that are able to solve some hard problems. I've challenged my team to think differently about how we provide communications at the theater level, right? I don't want to think in terms of what's broken from yesterday's equipment that we can upgrade to meet today's challenges. I want to figure out how do we jump leaps and bounds ahead to be able to provide capabilities that not only meet today's challenges, but are a little bit future-proof, right? This leapfrogging from iterative, 1.1 to 1.2 to 1.3. I'm over that. And so let me give you a use case of what I'm talking about. There are capabilities being developed in the PLEO and the MEO space that are going to give massive amounts of bandwidth to the tactical level. I'm talking about 200 gigabits per second from a spot beam over optical transport, or 10 to 60 gigabits per second over KA. So, and the cost of this is coming down massively. So why are we trying to, and nothing against the ESBEs, you're doing a fantastic job with the equipment you have, but why am I handcuffing you with capabilities that provide megabits per second? Why am I not giving the ESBE, yeah, I know. Why are we as an Army not giving the ESBE teams the ability to provide gigabits per second to the user? Now, that provides a different challenge on the engineering side, because if I give Isabella 48 PLEO gigabits to 10 gigabits per second capabilities, and she turns all of them on at once, we're going to find some choke points. So now I need the engineers to come back and look at where are those choke points, and how do we build a network across the Pacific, because that's my AOR, but eventually globally for the Army, where I don't have 5 RHNs that are the tie-in for the tactical network back into the strategic network. I have a global entry point where our tactical teams can come in from anywhere and ride whatever back into the DODIN, right? DIS is doing a great job with MPLS, but we've got to figure out where are those choke points and where's the engineering challenges to be able to enable that, because we are really at the point where we can almost not differentiate between a tactical assemblage and a strategic assemblage. So, and if I would ask one thing from industry, keep dreaming big, but make sure that we can figure out together how to build it so that we can turn it into one network, right? I'll get off my soapbox. Thanks.
Yeah, that's good insights, Rick. Okay, we got questions from the audience. There's a microphone right there. And, happy to call on people too. I see someone coming up. Good, all right. Okay, good.
I'll jump first. Major Darren Garee, 1st MD-TFS 6. Panel, thank you, sir, for this great discussion. Sir, wanted to kind of caveat or play on what the discussion you just had is, how do you see SD-WAN as a potential solution to help really aggregate a lot of these transport mechanisms and flatten the network? Do you see an opportunity to, there's been a lot of success with, just for instance, just point out one particular solution with Juniper Secure Vector Routing as a potential SD-WAN solution to, co-locate these at RHNs or various gateways to help optimize the network when you do have that max bandwidth. So just curious to hear about what you may see as a potential solution forward with SD-WAN or some sort of other technology.
Yeah, I think it's the future, right? And I'm not going to say that, hey, everybody go out there and invest in SD-WAN, but it's going to give us the capabilities that we've been trying to figure out for a long time. And when we talk about allowing the machines and the algorithms and the technology to do the hard work and take on that complexity, we're at that capability now. We've got some capabilities that vendors are providing. We've got some enterprise capabilities that are coming down the pipe from the Army Enterprise Services that are going to allow for software-defined networking, and that's going to really improve our ability to move data across the battlefield. when we combine that with DISA's uplift in their networks and going to an MPLS architecture, and then the other piece of that is how do we obfuscate our traffic in a way that allows us to operate with impunity wherever we're at, and we don't have to worry about anybody impeding our progress. It's coming. We're at the cusp of it, and we're going to see a lot more movement in that space in the next 2 to 3 years. So, you want to take?
Yeah. Also, we as an Army and as a DoD need to move away, stop from thinking we need to own networks, right? But we need to own data, right? So if someone is providing a transport to us, should we care as an Army, right? We should really be caring about the data that we're trying to push across, and we're stuck in the mentality of centralized management and centralized execution based on policies that are out there and whatnot, and we have to, as an Army, change that culture, right? As a DoD, change that culture and really go data-centric. And it's going to take not only senior signal leaders, but also operational leaders to understand that just because you don't own the network, you really want to own the data. And SD-WAN kind of gets us towards that. And we got to take these pockets of excellence and bring them into a full enterprise Army unified network solution. It's just going to take a little bit of change of culture to make that happen holistically.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great panel discussion. I'm Steve Owicki, retired Army MI. I've lived on your backbone for years. In fact, I retired when most of you were commissioned. But as I look at this, there's always been this problem that I used to call synchronized chaos. And as we look at tranche coming online, other things like that coming online, the capability will probably be there, but you guys are going to be the bridge of the enterprise with your soldiers constantly switching across the capabilities of the network. And that takes a different kind of skill set than the average soldier has. And we had to do the same thing, whether we're doing SIGINT, human, whatever. How do you think you're doing with your soldiers to be able to say, I have to keep the network up and running, and I may have to go to 20 different sources in 24 hours just to keep the signal going to whether it's the far end of the point or back to the headquarters?
I'd like to take the first response on that I could. So I think so part of the C2 fix architecture, which I think they 100% got right, and we've already alluded to it, is moving everything to become data centric, right? So when you move everything to where the tactical data environment is your plane of existence and everybody meets there, I now just use the transport, whatever transport's available, it always goes back to the data, central data point, right? And then on top of that, if all my systems are reaching that central data repository, it doesn't matter what system's on. I could be on, for us it was great when I could say, hey, sir, you know what? You can actually type a text message on CPCE and the guy with his ATAC phone is going to be able to get that text message. That's powerful. And then guess what? It doesn't matter if he's on 5G, rocking Wi-Fi from his Starshield, or if they're able to get it through their TSM data mesh matrix. It's becoming data is the new interoperable thing. So you just focus on the layers and diversity through those specific layers. With again, data is the central point. Does that kind of answer the question?
Part of the challenge is you can trust the layers to a degree, but the soldier's going to have to know when you got to flip a switch or go to something. I agree with you on the data approach to it, but it's that chaos of does the soldier know enough because we've trained him enough to be able to adapt constantly? Yeah. That's really the question.
Yeah. Okay. So I think on the soldier, does the soldier know enough? What does a soldier need to know? Right. For us in the 25th Infantry Division, the soldier needs to know how to establish the tactical backbone. That's what they need to really focus on. They shouldn't really worry about the configurations for all these cloud-centric architectures and networks, because they understand that you turn on the radio, you do your radio plan, the data gets to where it needs to go, right? So it goes back to like what Isabella was saying. It's all about readiness and investing in our people and making sure they understand those core functions that they need to enable within their particular MS. There is some interesting feedback we're getting through senior channels that, hey, the network is getting super simple, right? So it doesn't take any soldiers to put out a Starshield, right? So what do I need all my 25 Sierras, 25 or SATCOM operators to do, right? Well, hey, the SATCOM may become easier. We're going to fight off a commercial and a mixed architecture now, right? So now we need to, again, go to my point, is like, how do you establish that backbone with your TSM, with your data radios, 5G potentially, with your tri-lo systems, right? It becomes a diverse pace plan. And you got to divide and conquer and make sure that those chaos, you can only manage the chaos to a certain point, but then when you go back to it, it's like at the end of the day, everybody just has to rely on their training and do what they do best.
All right. Who else?
Still to that question, there's another great panel at 1600 that talks more about that, sir. It might be worth your while to stay. Over to you, Terry.
I'll also say, sir, about a year ago, we had a sit down with the commandant for the schoolhouse, and we addressed a lot of these issues with the commandant. And the commandant, I know they're taking that in to figure out how they can reshape training there at the schoolhouse, to see how they can address some of those issues. Because we have a lot of new technologies that are actually coming out here, as well as all the different things you just spoke about. And so those soldiers have to be capable of doing that. So they're looking at that, and we'll see, in the near future on what will be some of the changes from the schoolhouse on that, sir.
Yeah, I would just offer that, in 21 years supporting warfighters, I've never had a warfighter come to me and tell me which transport they want to use, right? They don't care, right? They want the mission to happen. But to your point, we're actually having to upskill or train the leadership, right? What does data mean to me as a leader? There's a course called Data Literacy for Leaders. There's actually two courses, the 101 that walks senior leaders through what data is and why it's important. And then there's a 201 that walks our soldiers through how to use data and how to be able to connect all the different data feeds to give us the products and the capabilities that we want. So I would encourage you, if you're in uniform or if you're supporting the Army and you don't understand data, please seek that course out or something like it. And you're seeing it at the schoolhouse as well, as what Terry was kind of saying, is the focus at the Signal Schoolhouse is focusing more on data and less on kind of the old way of trying to operate a piece of kit.
How you doing? David Vore, Army Enterprise Service Desk. So my question always comes to me is I'm going to throw a lot of acronyms out right now. So with AUDS, with EAF, with CFFC, with all of these things that we're going to this global fabric and being, I guess, more managed from the mainland in a way, what does that look like for management here in the Pacific AOR?
I'll take an initial stab at that. As I mentioned earlier, the Army policy and mentality is centralized management and centralized execution. And we have to change that mentality that the SMEs, the subject matter experts, might not be co-located at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Eisenhower, right? They might be right here in the Pacific. They might be in 25th ID. They might be down in 30th, 78th, 59th. And having the Army understand that we need to utilize the talent where they may be sitting in these new enterprise architectures is a change in the mindset and mentality of direct C2 and for command and control. And we're seeing some of that now with like AUDS as an example, and we're trying to take those lessons learned and then feed them into the programmed process for the other capabilities that are being pushed out as well. Some things are going to have to be centralized, but there's a lot that does not need to be. And it's just enabling those to do it. It's also upskilling our workforce, right? Some of that's easy. There's a direct one-for-one equivalent. Some if it's not. And as leaders, I look at my training dollars and ask, if you're going to go to a class that's for something that a technology we're doing right now, is that best well spent? Or maybe we should look at a technology that is adjacent or might be used in the future and send you to that instead as investments in the workforce.
I'll also hop in here. So a lot of our services that we provide so far are in our AITP, right? And that's dictated to us by NetCom. And I know that that's relooked every year or so to see what additional services that we need to provide, at the NEC level. And then also that feeds into our training program on what we need to be trained on, right? And like the boss was saying here, data literacy is like the baseline for it, right? And then we have this continuous learning that's going on in the NEC where we have to be able to deal with cloud. We have to be able to work through software-defined networks, understanding all that training that we need. And so it's just a constant growing. We have to continue to understand what new technologies are coming out and then begin to come up with a training plan on how we're going to get after those things.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? I thought Rob Christian had a question. No?
He's smarter than all of us.
So with all these efforts going on, you talk about the differences in all the different mission sets, whether you're down at the NEC or you're talking about strategic level, operational. What efforts are we putting forth to draw all this together into a single picture so we can predict the choke points, so we can predict the failings, we can predict the successes, and have an overall COP for this entire region, which is just insane.
All right, so I guess that's mine. We got a Pacific Doden Operations Center that we're working to become the JNCC for exercises. And the way that I describe what we're trying to do is we're trying to take all the different feeds from DISA, Indo-Pacific, USERPAC, RCC, and the NEC, which is mostly the same, and we're trying to put that together onto an common operational picture that doesn't look like, if anybody's seen a SolarWinds view of a network, that's not a COP. Some signal geeks might geek out over it, right? But what we really want to do is we want to show a picture of the theater that looks very similar to that, but at the theater level, so pulled back a little bit. And then I want to be able to provide any commander at their echelon a view of what they're responsible for. And so if General Ferris, the 311th commander, walks in and he wants to see all of the assemblages across the theater, whether they're strategic or tactical, we should be able to show him that layer. And then we can turn off the tactical, or turn on the tactical and turn off the strategic. If Andy Brokoff walks in and he wants to see just his brigade, we can show him that. If Isabella Lundy walks in and wants to see where her deployed forces are across the theater, she should be able to see that. And then when I click on an SNN assemblage, let's say that we've got a team in Brisbane for an exercise, and I click on that assemblage, the maintenance posture of that assemblage should be fed from the enterprise data from Geeks Army, right? And then we have another digital overlay that can show the transport that they're utilizing, what's the latency, what's the utilization rate, what's the path that's being used, if we can track that, because MPLS is going to be faster than what we can track. But giving the commander the ability to drill down into their forces arrayed across the theater and turning on and off digital overlays that are fed by enterprise data that give a situational awareness. And it's not something that we've got soldiers hand jamming in a talk somewhere or in an operations center, right? And so we're training our soldiers and our leaders how to write the code through low code or no code situations to be able to get the APIs to pull that digital connectivity across and into a COP. It sounds very expensive and it sounds very hard, and I would say yes to both of those, but one of the cool things that has happened in the last 2 years, we've got some leaders that were forward thinking. We've got a data science directorate at Netcom, and the director of the data science directorate came from the CDAO. And before he left the CDAO, he bought a bunch of tools for the department that all the services can use for free. So we're able to leverage that. We've got an Army Futures Command that doesn't exist in any of the other services. They stood up an AI integration center that developed something called Pangea. You should go check it out. It's a digital COP, and it does exactly what I just said. They pulled up the 11th Airborne Division, and they pulled up one of their brigades, and you could click on their Bradleys, and it shows their maintenance posture as fed by Geeks Army. It shows their fuel levels as fed by DLA. So there are a multitude of applications that we can use with the tools that the Army has developed, and it's FREE, which sucks for industry, right? But that doesn't mean that industry's out, right? What it means is now we can have a real conversation about capabilities and gaps. And then industry can come in and help us with those gaps, right? So we're going to build this over the next couple of months. It's not going to be pretty. There's going to be a lot of tears. A lot of majors are going to be working very hard and probably cursing my name. But we're going to get after it because that's what we were told to do, and that's what we're going to do. And this is where we need leaders to understand why the data is important so that we don't have people hand jamming stuff, right? We have the capability now to be able to take live data and put it on a dashboard instead of taking live data and hand jamming a PowerPoint slide. So let's do that, right? And so thanks for the softball, Chief. We have the ability to see, this is what I really want to talk about. We have the ability to see ourselves today in no other way that we've had before. And I want to say that I think that the last mile to get into that one network is being able to tie in the discovery of the tactical assemblages. We've got discovery through AESMP on the strategic side. So how do we do that on the tactical side so that when Isabella's team plugs in and turns on, it's automatically feeding into the network instead of somebody having to hand jam it? I think that's the last mile.
All right. Okay, I think that was a good final question for the group today. So thanks, Chief. We're going to kind of close it out. I'll say a few things and hand over to Colonel Brokoff to wrap it. I'll first thank the panel members and Colonel Brokoff for his leadership for today. I learned so much just sitting here listening to each of your different perspectives from where you sit. All signaliers, in this theater, but whether it's in Alaska or Hawaii or covering down in different parts of the AOR, it's just really fascinating to hear each of your challenges that you've had in your journey so far in the current job that you have. And I know that you all bring to your current job years and years of experience that enable you to do your job, and yet we still face challenges because that's the nature of what we're doing here in this business. So thank you all. Thank you all for being a great audience today. Listening to, and afterwards we're going to take a picture of the script, so don't go away. Over to you, Eddie, to wrap it up.
Okay. Hey, sir, thank you. Just a couple of comments and overarching themes. I think really the biggest thing is we got to continue to modernize. The Army's directing us to do that. Each and every one of you talked about your efforts in that space, and we got to take a hard look at risk because we still got to maintain the comms capability that we have across the theater, and all the while from the CSA is accelerate it at every chance you get, and we are all on board. We're going to improve integration, interoperability. That came up a lot. And just kind of last but not least, we don't know who we voted for best dressed. But can I vote?
Yeah, you can vote.
I don't have 51%, but I think you, sir, because I would much rather be wearing an Aloha shirt than what I'm wearing now. I think there's a website y'all can go to vote for the panel members who's best dressed. I'd just like to end by saying, we are the voice of the Pacific. We're all here together. We're all getting after it. And it's such a great honor to be a part of this team. We're better together. I want to thank AFCEA, thank industry, academia, and the partners that are out there that help put this all together. Glenn, shout out to you and AFCEA for helping to organize this and put such a great panel together of such distinguished officers that lead all the signal efforts for the Army across the Pacific. Sir?
All right, let's give him a hand.